What's up, everybody? It's Demetrice and Anika here from Clair Em Motivators, back with your weekly dose of motivation, inspiration, and encouragement. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, welcome. We started doing these videos a few months ago just to help people motivate, encourage, and inspire them, to give you all something to do, something to watch during the pandemic, to take your mind off of everything. We've had a lot of people join the Clair Em family, people that started following our social media pages. So I just wanted to take a second to let you guys know who we are before we jump into the video. So I am Demetrice. I am a certified life coach. I'm a lawyer. I'm a motivational speaker. And we together cover topics related to health. Anika is a physician and she's the health coach for Clair Em Motivators. And so we do videos, public talks, and things like that, talking about ways to improve your health, improve your finances, improve your relationship. We coach on confidence, love and relationship, diversity, career. We cover a wide range of topics with the ultimate goal being using the things that we've learned to help people live their best lives. So we're happy that you all joined the Clair Em family. And typically when we start our videos, we like to talk about what's motivating us through the week. And so I decided to do something fun this week and have myself and Anika answer a question about what would motivate us most right now in our life. So it's kind of like would you rather, but with the twist. So I'm gonna pull a question out of this cup, Anika, and the topic is, which one of these items would motivate you most in your life right now? You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Let me pick a good one. I didn't cheat either, so.
Yeah.
All right. Which would motivate you most? Would it be reading a good book or watching a good movie?
Right now, I would have to say watching a good movie. Watching a good
Why?
movie because it is cold, it is raining, we have a fire going. And if for all of
Oh
you
my
all, you roll your eyes if you want to. For all of you all that just joined, this is my happy place. So I would rather sit down, warm and fuzzy feeling with some hot cocoa and watch me a good movie and try to make it through the entire
I was about to
movie.
say, the movie be watching you if it's cold and the fire and hot cocoa. That sounds like you would rather take a nap.
Oh yes, that wasn't on there, but yeah.
Okay.
All right, what about you?
So mine would be reading a good book,
So
because
you can
I
fall
already
asleep too.
know with this movie situation, I'm going to bed. I'm not about to sit here and stay through a movie. I think the last movie that we watched was Antebellum with
And you didn't fall asleep. You
I
couldn't
did
have.
fall asleep. It was a good movie, but
Yes.
one thing that has kept me motivated through the entire pandemic has been reading. So I order books. I've like sent you pictures of books that I
Yeah.
ordered, because I feel like it's just a way to check out, like not to have to watch commercials or none of that. Just literally check out, get a good book, snuggle up, and I can read as much or as little as I want. And I know when I'm falling asleep in my book,
Yeah, I was gonna
right?
say you fall asleep too. Yeah.
But I feel like I catch myself when I'm like hitting the book. And so
Yeah.
I wake back up and then I can just put the book aside and go to sleep, and I can read as much or as little as I want. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
with what will motivate me most right now is reading a good book.
All right.
Have you read any books since you've been in quarantine?
I've been the opposite. I've watched every
Oh
movie
my
that there is.
God.
So the answer to that would be no.
Okay. Well, you keep watching your movies. I'll keep reading all the books. And then you tell me
I'll
about the
fill you
movies you
in.
watch.
Yes.
Yes. And I will tell you about all the books that I've been reading.
Yes. All right. Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Alrighty, guys. So if you read the title, then you know that the topic of this video is going to be hard truths that we all need to accept to change our lives. This is a topic that I like to discuss with people because it is, sometimes somebody tells you something and it has that little sting with it. And it's not always the easiest way to deliver, but it is one of those things that when you accept these truths that we're going to talk about, it really can change your life. It's things that we've had to do. So some of these will apply to us, or it's things that we've seen other people do, like in our profession or just in our daily lives, that we feel like if people would just accept these hard truths, it really does go a long way to changing your perspective and ultimately changing your life, whether that be your relationships, your finances, just the way you show up in the world. Accepting these things really, really does make a huge difference. So, Anika, you want to start us off with the first one? What's a hard truth you think that if people accept it, it could change their life?
Um, so one would be that sometimes it was your fault. Now that's a shocker. Okay, that's a shocker. Because it it's hard to admit fault. It really is.
Right.
It really is. And then sometimes, because there are sometimes where you are blatantly wrong. We've all had that where it's just like you got a sit down moment and you're like, you know what, that was wrong. I
Right.
shouldn't have yelled at my kid like that. I shouldn't have yelled at my coworker like that. I should have handled that differently. And so it's not necessarily those, because those you can do that. But the ones where it is, let's say I'm talking to another person and I didn't intend for that to come out that way, but the other person perceived it to be that way. And it's one of those where I think that's a hard truth, is that that was your fault. Even if I did, that was not my intent, but you received it that way, then your perception is your reality, and I need to apologize. And so I think that that's probably one that's real tough, when I didn't intend for it to hurt. Um, that's a hard truth to kind of wrap your mind around.
I think that's a good one, especially because there are certain areas where like your intent matters a lot. I'm a lawyer, so I kind of think in terms of that. Intent is the difference between like murder and manslaughter. That's a big difference. But in
Yeah.
life, your intent doesn't really matter that much. Impact is what's most important. So you could have the best intentions in the world and it have a negative impact. And a lot of times I think we are conditioned to only focus on our intent, right? Like you give yourself the benefit of the doubt because well, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings,
Yeah. My
or
heart
I
was in
didn't
a good
mean
place.
to, one thing, and I have, triggered me because I'm thinking about this person that I know that she has the best intentions in the world. She has a really good, pure heart, but the things that she does, she kind of inserts herself into situations with the best of intentions, but it usually creates a mess. And so she walks away and there's this mess left behind. And I'm just like, girl, like, I understand that you have good intentions, but sometimes you just need to, fall back. And so I think that is a hard truth that people have to understand, that sometimes your intent just doesn't matter, right? There
Yep.
are areas in life, like I said, in criminal law, maybe in medicine, where like whether you intended or didn't intend to do something matters. But in just your everyday life and interactions with people, your intent, it kind of really doesn't matter. Or I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, because obviously doing something intentionally is worse than not doing it intentionally. But the impact for the person that was affected is the same. And I
Yep.
think in terms of the fault part, I think, as kids, we start out, you always want to explain why it wasn't you, right? Like that wasn't my fault because, and then you find a way to make it everybody else. But sometimes you really do have to sit with yourself and say, you know what, that was my fault, and
Yep.
just deal with, like you're not gonna die. It's all right. Understand that had this impact, or that this happened, and learn from it and move forward.
Absolutely.
So the one that I have next is, let's see, sometimes you're the villain, which is kind of the same thing, right? Sometimes it's your fault. And I said, sometimes you're the villain in someone else's story, or sometimes you're the villain in your own story. I don't know if you've ever met a person that self-sabotages. People who, for example, will decide that they're going to fail before they even try. And so they end up going through life making decisions in a way that's really sabotaging themselves, or people who engage in negative self-talk. And so self-talk means literally the way that you talk to yourself. So if you make a mistake and then you call yourself stupid, if you're like, well, I never do anything right, I'm so stupid. You are becoming your own villain, right? Like you are the person that is holding you back in your own life. Not to say that there aren't other circumstances, but I have coached people, I interact with people that they really are their own villain. Like they are the person that's standing in their way of greatness. And then even for me personally, I've had to understand that like I'm probably the villain in some other people's story. Again, to your point, it wasn't intentionally, right? I've
Yeah.
never done anything on purpose to hurt people. But when you really look back and take an account of some decisions that you may have made, you're gonna be the villain in some people's story. So just this attitude that some people go through life with like they're always the victim and never the villain, that's not realistic. We have all been the villain at some point in some interaction with somebody.
Yep. And then it doesn't, taking it back to intent, it doesn't always have to be I was intentionally a villain in somebody's story. It doesn't have to be that I went out and plotted and planned. Because as being a physician, I never want to be a villain in somebody's story, but we have to be honest to know that there is a mistrust with medicine. And so sometimes I am a villain in a story by default, just by the fact that I am a physician. And so that's not anything that I ever want to be, but that is something I have to recognize. And it goes back to, okay, well, then let me, when I'm interacting with patients, when I'm interacting with people, let me carefully approach this situation because I know I'm coming sometimes from the standpoint all I am doing trying to do is help, but that's not always how it's perceived just because of that distrust.
Um, One that I just came up with, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but parents with kids. Like sometimes you are the villain in your kid's story, even though you were doing it as a sacrifice for them,
Yep.
even though you did it because you love them, even though you did it because that's how you were raised and you didn't know anything different, your kid still sees you as the villain in certain situations, right? Like obviously they love you, but I think that's a hard one for parents to accept. The time that you did yell at your kids or your kids saying, I feel like you were never there for me. And you're like, well, I worked all the time and I did it for you. Your kid sees you as the villain and you have to own that, right? That wasn't your intent. You were doing it from a good hearted place. You were just doing the best that you could, but your kid sees you as the villain. And so for me, one thing that I always tell people is you don't get to decide when you're the villain and the victim in someone else's story. They get to decide. And if they say you're the villain, then you got to own that. And you got to figure out again, like how do you reconcile that and do better and move forward?
Absolutely. One that I have is that everything happens for a reason, but sometimes the reason can be that you're making bad decisions. And so it's it. I always say to turn around, to turn that mirror in front of you and look in it is a very hard thing to do because you in every aspect of my life, if everything is in shambles, if at work it's in shambles, at home it's in shambles, in my relationships with my friends, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my family is in shambles, you do have to kind of step back because the common denominator in that situation is you. And so
You.
I have to step back to say, okay, what is it that every job that I've gone to I am finding myself quitting or I'm getting fired. What is it that I am doing? Because these places do not have the only common denominator is yourself. And so, yes, things do happen for a reason, but sometimes that reason may be the decisions that you are making.
I 100% agree with that. In the context that I'm thinking of it in is women and relationships. So one thing that you'll hear people say is, "Oh, I attract bad guys," or I attract guys who ain't about nothing. I can't figure out why I keep ending up with X, Y, and Z. And for me, I look at it like we attract everyone, right? As a woman, you're gonna attract nice guys. Me, you're gonna attract everyone. But then who is it that you are choosing? Right? Like who is it that you are actively choosing to engage in a relationship with and why? Obviously, because of what I do, I have to put the disclaimer that we are not talking about situations where you are being abused or mistreated, right? Like abuse, mistreatment, violence, none of that is never your fault. I don't care what the circumstances are. But I mean, just in your everyday, regular relationships, right? Why do I keep getting with guys who cheat on me? Why do I keep getting with guys who do whatever? And the same goes for men too. At some point, you have to ask yourself, what is it about me? Right? Like, what am I doing? And sometimes those looks in the mirror, they're hard. It's hard
Mm-hmm.
to do, to realize, like you said, your kid's life is a certain way. All your kids are having struggles in their lives. You are having struggles in your friendships. You're having issues at work. It's not everybody else. you know? And another thing too is that two things can be true. We say that on this channel all the time. I'm not saying that there ain't nothing wrong with them too, but I think that you can't ignore that there is something going on with you. And so when I hear people going on rants about their kids, I'm like, well, who raised them? Right? You did. Not to say that everything they do is on you, but sometimes some of that is you. So I think that's a hard one. And sometimes, you know, people kind of get defensive or they don't want to hear it, but it's like you said, it's absolutely true. When you're going around and you constantly getting into arguments with people, or you constantly, you know, you can't figure out why this thing keeps happening. And you're like, well, everything happens for a reason. And here I am back here in this same situation for the 10th time, and everything happens for a reason. Like, no. Well, yeah, everything happens for a reason, and you're the reason, right?
Yep.
Let's see, my phone blocked. The next one that I have is extreme independence is a trauma response. And I know before I became a life coach, like years ago, I read that somewhere and I was like, huh? And child, if that thing wasn't talking to me, specifically calling me out by name, Demetrice Lopez, I am speaking to you, then I don't know who it was talking to. That was one of those things that I had to realize. And what I mean by that is when you have a mindset that you can take care of yourself, I don't need nobody. I can take care of myself, you know, and especially if you get mad, oh, I don't need y'all, right? Like I can take care of myself. I don't need you. That is a trauma response. That is you having been let down so many times that you now believe that you can't rely on people. When you think about especially Black women, and I've only lived in this skin as a Black woman, so I don't know if other people deal with this, but I know that Black women deal with this, where we feel like we have to carry the world on our shoulders. And sometimes we do have to, but there you can be in a situation where you're with someone who's trying to support you and you won't let them because you're still in this mindset that like I have to take care of myself and I don't need nobody else. Child, I could be doing something and doing it wrong and I'm still like, I don't need your help. But I had to realize the place that that was coming from. I'm not used to having somebody help me with things. I wasn't raised that way, right? If nothing else, my mom raised me to be strong-minded, independent, and to not need nobody. These were instructions, right? Like this was ingrained on my brain and your brain from youth all the way up to you don't rely on nobody. You need to know how to take care of yourself. You need to be independent, right? Then you grow up, you get married, you get a career, you have kids, and suddenly that thing that was your, you know, that you were raised to be and the thing that was celebrated because you could take care of yourself, now it's problematic, right? Now it's like, okay, wait, like I'm your husband or I'm your friend or I'm your supervisor and I need you to let me help you. And you're like, wait, what is that? What do you mean let you help? I'm supposed to do by myself. I'm supposed to take care of myself. Have you experienced that or do you?
Oh yeah, so twofold. We were raised in the same household. So while
True.
you were talking, the first one of the first things I thought about is we were conditioned, and my mom, our mom, was conditioned that way herself. I mean, we had a
Yourself,
from
from her
grandmother,
mother,
you know.
right?
Yeah, so
And
our
our grandmother
grandmother
got
was,
it from her grandmother.
yes. So she, you know, we saw these women, and not only is it what they say, it's what they do. So
And
not
it's what
only is
they
she
had to
saying,
do, right? For them,
yes, yes.
not
So
denying
it's not
that for
only,
them, that was real.
yes, and it's not only that they're saying, hey, you are strong, you can do this on your own, but they were doing it themselves too. You know, our mom oftentimes was our mom and our dad. So we're not only hearing her say this, we're seeing her do this too. So yes, we were raised in the same household, but it does come a time in life where I always say you got to change that narrative, because when I got pregnant with Giovanni, so disclaimer for all that do not know, Gavino and I were married now, but we were not married at the time when I got pregnant with Giovanni. And so one of the things that we find ourselves in a situation, we're not married and we're trying to figure our way through this. And I remember mom with very good intent to say, you know, if all else fails, you can do this by yourself. And I'm looking around like, wait a minute. Uh
For myself.
what am I supposed to do? And I don't even think Giovanni was here yet. I'm like,
Right.
I can carry this baby in this belly by myself, but no, ma'am, I cannot do this one by myself. I didn't
Well,
make
I
this
don't
baby by
want to,
myself.
right? You could, if
Yes, I
you
don't.
had to,
Why should
you
I
could,
have
obviously,
to?
but you don't want to. I
No,
don't want you
he
to.
No, I'm not letting him off the hook that easy. We made this
True.
baby
Right.
together.
Yeah, no, you need to help.
Get over here. Sit down
Right.
and we're gonna figure this out. So it was one of those. So it was in that time where I had to say, okay, Anika, I'm not, yes, could I do it by myself? I was bred from a very strong set of women. Absolutely, I probably could. I don't know. I don't even know because that's not the story that my life unfolded in. But it was one that I had to check and say, okay, hey, yes, but no, I don't want to, and I'm not going to do this
Just
by myself.
uttering to put my own stuff on blast again, because again, we're not telling y'all or encouraging you to do stuff that we haven't lived ourselves. Like she just said, she had a moment when she got pregnant where she had to say like, okay, no, I don't do this myself. For me, it was Chris who helped me realize it, because there were certain things that I didn't see as independence, but he was like, let me take care of you. And I'm like, I don't need you to take care of
Yeah,
me, right? But as a man, he explained to me what I hear is, as a man, what he heard was, you don't need me, right? Like, so my sentence was, I don't need you to do this right here for me. And in his mind, he's hearing, you don't need me. And I'm like, well, and it's like, okay, for him, it's like, well, if you don't need me, then why are you here? Why am I
yeah,
here? And truth be told, just uttering that phrase, I need help. For a lot of people, that's hard to do. And I was one of them, just being able to say, like, I need help. Because, like you said, mom was mom and dad. Mom was busy. Dad, God rest his soul, he wasn't there all the time, most of the
hmm
time, hardly ever. But um, it just is like, you kind of get to this place where you just figure it out, right?
yeah,
Like, I'm gonna just have to
yeah,
figure it out. I'm gonna have to find some money from somewhere. I'm gonna have to hustle. I'm gonna have to just figure it out on my own. And that becomes your identity. And then you
yeah,
get to a place in your life where it's safe and you don't have to do that anymore. But your mind hasn't registered,
mm,
hey, you're safe now. You don't have to do that anymore. You're still like, nope, I can figure it out. I got it. Like, I can make decisions. I can do all this stuff on my own. And so getting to a place, even in the smallest ways, at work, in relationships, where it's like, look, I need help. I need somebody to help me. This is a lot. And, not that I can't do it on my own. Some stuff you can or you shouldn't have to. Um,
yeah.
but then there's just some stuff that's like, it ain't really that big of a deal. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. Child, I need help. So now I just be walking around on any given day. I need help. He'd be like, really? You can't do that? Nope. Mm-mm. I need your help.
The next one that I have, and we touched on this, is it's not them, it's you. Another one, hence the topic, a very hard truth to accept, but it kind of falls in line with what we've said. One good point that you've already talked about was with your children. So I have four children, and all four of them, one is in and out of jail, one is on drugs, the other one is X, Y, and Z. So I have, four kids and may not be finding their way through life as I think they should, but you it's not always, oh, well, that's just how they turned out, girl, that's just I don't know what happened to them. You are the root. You're the root of that tree. And so if all of my kids are out here wayward, then I have to turn that around and say, okay, I'm the common denominator. I've nurtured them. How am I involved in that? And it's not just with your kids, but that's one example that I thought about. Because
And
I
with
know that's a hard one.
right. And with that, I think we're not saying that the answer is yes, right? That you're the reason they're wayward. We're saying at least be willing to ask yourself the question, right? Instead of being like you said, just you find independent reasons why everybody else is the way that they are, at least be willing to ask yourself the question. My kids turned out this way. Was there something I did? Was there something I could have done? And don't just be saying no to coddle yourself, but ask them, right? Like, talk to them. I found a lot of parents have a hard time talking to their adult children, because immediately where the parents' mind goes is, well, I was a single mom. I had to take care of you. I did the best I could. So, I
Yeah,
did
go
everything
on
I
about your
could.
business.
So go on about your business. This is all your problem now. You stop blaming me for your problems. When it
Yeah.
really is like, put your guard down, put your defenses down. They understand that you did the best that you could, right? They understand that you gave them all the resources, but there are areas where you fell short. Which leads me to my next one, which is, you can do your best at something and still need to do better. You could do your best at something and still fail. You can do your best at something and not win. And so I think this has come up a lot in terms of like the participation trophy thing with kids.
Yeah,
You
that's why I
reward
just sitting
kids
here
like,
thinking it.
yeah, that's the first place my mind goes. You reward kids just for trying. I think that people carry that mentality into adulthood and it's really not healthy. And I can see some people thinking that it's harsh to tell a child that, right? Like, you're not always going to be the best person on the team. That little boy you got that you think he can sing, mama, but the whole church is like, oh. But to the mama, that's the best little singing little thing in the world. And so it's not always easy to say like, hey, because when your kid they try out for something, they don't make the team. How do you make them feel better? Well, did you do your best? Well, then that's all that matters, right? You're told that as a kid. So as an adult, that's kind of the space that people live in, right? I did my best. So that's all that matters. Well, could you have done better? Right? Yes, you did your best, but you also could have done better. Or the one that I see it the most is people accepting that as a reason for why they are being treated the way that they are. People who have like issues with parents, they'll go back to that. Well, they did the best they could, right? They didn't have the resources, they didn't know any better. And so for me, it's always the two things can be true. Yes, they did their best, and you were still hurt by their actions, right? And so it's like somebody doing their best doesn't cancel out the fact that you were hurt. And you doing your best doesn't mean that the person wasn't hurt. Um, and it just, I don't know why, but I think that that one has been the most prevalent one that I've heard. And after going, getting training to become a life coach, you kind of hear things differently. And so now that's one that when I hear, like my ears instantly perk up because I recognize it. Because I can remember, again, to put my own business out there, there are certain things that happen with mom where I would say like, mom, I wanted you to do something in this situation and you didn't do anything. I felt like you didn't protect me, or I felt like you didn't speak up for me, or I felt like you weren't there for me. And the response would just be, well, I did my best. That is so dismissive, right? You didn't acknowledge anything that I just said. You literally covered yourself in the pain that probably was caused by your child saying you fell short somewhere by saying, well, I did my best. And another one that I experienced was I would tell other people that I love, like, hey, I really felt this way about this, what happened when I was a kid. And somebody would say, well, your sister's a doctor and you're a lawyer, so everybody did everything right. And I'm like, huh? How do those things reconcile, right? That's what we do. But yeah, you don't know half of the story of, some stuff that we may
Yeah.
have experienced. And the fact that we turned out all right doesn't mean that things didn't happen along the way, right? And so for me, I'm like, the saying that I did my best is really just a way to dismiss a feeling. It's really not taking accountability for what actually happened.
Yes. And then, one thing though, I would have to say is I did my best should not necessarily always end in a period. Because I
Right.
I did my best, like we say, two things can be true. I did, and because I'm sitting here thinking as we're talking that I'm somebody's mom,
Right.
and I'm sitting here not thinking I'm doing it all right because I don't know. I just said that I watched TV and I didn't read the book. So I'm not reading. I don't have a book. I don't have a playbook about with the parenting. I know some of the things with my parents that I didn't like, so I try not to do, or some of the things from my parents that I did like, so I try to do. So I'm trying to figure this out. But I'm sitting here thinking, man, what if one day they set me down and said, Mom, this, that wasn't your best. And I'm sitting here thinking, whoo, oh
Child, that
man,
was
I
my
did
best.
my
I ain't got
best.
what else
I
did you
don't know what
want?
else I'm supposed to get to you. But I did my best, comma, I have to accept that it was not good enough so that we can heal. We can heal because if
Right.
I do not acknowledge it, we won't heal. And so that's the same to put my business out there too. I mean, it's the same in a marriage. So Gavino and I, when we got together, Gavino was 19 and I was 20 years old. We were very rough around the edges. Now you add in children and medical school. One thing that once I got out of medical school residency, Gavino and I, early on after I got out of residency, we still struggled in our marriage from residency. Residency was over. It had been over for three
Right.
years,
Like, why are we
but
still
we
doing
had still struggled. I'm like, why are we still? We made it. We
it?
made it through. But what I had to recognize is that Gavino, during that time in residency, I I let me tell you, energy wise, I was giving my best. And I always got the scraps. Everybody else got the best of me, and I got the scraps, which is how I felt. But to hear him sit and say, hey, that you were not doing your best, and it was a hurtful thing that you do not want to hear. You do not want to hear, I'm not doing my best when I am giving you 110%.
Right.
But
Or
at that
you are
time,
doing your best and it's still not enough.
good,
Right.
yes, it's not good enough. And so instead of, if I had not accepted that truth and tried to figure out how do we step forward, we might not still be married, because it was really a roadblock. It was a roadblock for us. And so this is one that's personal to me, is that sometimes your best is not good enough, and you have to accept it and reconcile it,
Right.
heal, and so you can move on.
Right. Even to some of the points that we just went over before, in that very example that you just gave, you were focused on your intent, right? I'm giving you
Yeah.
everything that I have. I'm not trying to let you down. I have to be gone. I'm trying to, change the circumstances. I'm trying to make more money for us. I'm trying to become a doctor. So you're focused on your intent. He's focusing on the impact. I'm at home by myself with 2 children. And he's telling you, hey, you're the villain in my story. And you're like, no, I'm not. Right. And so
Yep.
it's like,
How am I feeling?
right. I'm the residency was the villain, but he's telling you, you're the villain. And so it's one of those moments where those hard truths, it's like 3 of them in this one example.
Oh yeah,
He gets to
absolutely.
decide that you are the villain in his story, and you have
Yep.
to acknowledge that. You have to focus on the impact for him and not your intent and what you were trying to do. And you had to acknowledge that you were doing the best that you could, and it still wasn't good enough. And
Yep.
for me, with mom, because I don't want it to be left out there, like I love my mother so much. And the thing that I love most about her is that she arrived at a place eventually where she did the very thing that you just said. She said, you know what? I did do my best, but what could I have done better? And that opened up a conversation just to be able to talk about it, right? Not that you were trying to agree or disagree with the other person, but only that you even care enough about me to ask what you could have done better. And then you get to the point where you acknowledge, hey, I acknowledge what you said. I understand your perspective. And you heal that and you move on, right?
And you move on. Yep.
But we have these blocks up where we don't want to swallow these pills. I don't want to be the villain. I only want to focus on my intent. I know I did my best, and so you need to stop complaining. And it's not until you sit and you swallow that big old horse pill that take a lot to get down. But on the other side of that is something so beautiful, right? You're able to connect and you're able to literally close that chapter and move on. Child, that was a whole word right there. It's some more tips on here. That's it.
I know. I think I got one more. Mine, I know it. I'm like, well, man, we should just drop the mic and just move on out of here. But no, the one I had is that you're not telling the whole truth.
Oh man.
And that's one that I think I even had to kind of talk to you about it, because it's one that it's like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not telling the whole truth. But if you think about it, it's one I am telling the truth, but I am leaving some parts out in order to kind of make me feel better, make me look better. And so one that the best example that I can kind of give, because it's one that happens, it happens often in just professional life. And so a lot of times with patients, you have patients come in and you have to understand that as a physician, I can only help you as much as, for one, that you help yourself, or as much as you tell the truth. And so when you come in, I can only go by what you say, because I don't go home with you. So you can come in and be like, yeah, doc, I take my medicine. Diabetes, I take my medicine every single day, twice a day, doc. I check my blood sugar. It looks really, really good. And so me, I'm all like, okay, well, good deal. Let's get that blood work. In 2 days, it'll come back. I'll give you a call. It sounds like you're doing pretty good. Keep going. In 2 days, the blood work comes back, and I'm looking at this like, you couldn't have taken medicine for the last for the last year. Or you know what? In your defense, maybe I was taking my medicine every day, but I told you I was watching my diet. And I am watching my diet.
I was
I'm
watching
eating.
it.
I did.
I
was watching it. I'm in quarantine, and I did eat a salad. But what I didn't tell you is that salad was on my burger. I took that salad and I put that ranch, and I made me a hamburger, and I ate that salad, doc. So it's just, I am telling the truth. I am telling the truth. But I am
That's funny.
leaving some parts of that truth out
Right. Because I
just
don't want to
because
look
I
bad.
don't want to disappoint, or I want to, I want to make myself look good. So
And
that's
just
one that we're laughing, but
that's funny.
it is.
But it's a hard pill to swallow because one, I don't think sometimes people do that on purpose. We call those people
Yeah.
manipulative, right? When you're intentionally manipulating the truth to get whatever result. That's we don't even talk about them people. Y'all need to not do that. The people that we are talking about are the ones who aren't doing it intentionally, or it just jump out your mouth so fast, like you didn't even realize that you were doing it. But I'm laughing because it's so crazy to see. And it's so ridiculous when you know that, like, I can see through that. I know you made a salad on a hamburger with some bread. You still got the ketchup on the side of your mouth. And so it's funny that you say that in terms of medicine, because I've seen it as an attorney as well. And that's when I
Oh,
first
I bet.
started noticing. But people
Oh, I bet
get
you see
older
it.
and you start understanding nuance, you recognize that truth is one of those words like love or forgiveness that just is nuanced. It's levels and it's nuanced, because truth is like there's my truth, there's your truth, there's the truth, there's the whole truth. Like truth is levels. And so one of the ways that I see it is people will call and literally ask for your help, and you give them that disclaimer. I cannot help you if you do not tell me the truth. It's like the same thing you tell your kids, right? If you don't tell me the truth, I cannot help you. And so you'll see situations where somebody will say, this was my role in this, whatever. And one, you're like, well, one, that's not even possible. You couldn't even get this outcome if what you were saying was true. Take like a DWI, for example. You're like, well, I didn't have nothing to drink. Well, your blood alcohol was like a 0.139. So something happened. You had something, right? And
Yeah.
it's still like, well, no, and they'll come up with some other reason why it was that. And you're like, but I'm showing you that it
Yeah.
can be right. Or in my case, it's people telling their attorneys and their attorneys telling me, but whatever. You see it all the time where people, I don't know what it is. It's like you just don't want to look bad, or you don't want to be the villain. You don't want
Yeah.
to ever be the person that's at fault. And so you just don't tell the whole truth so as to protect yourself. But when it comes to like relationships, when it comes to really trying to show up in the world differently, you got to be honest. And the person you got to start with is you. Like, tell yourself the truth before you go to the doctor. Say, you know what? I ain't been
Yeah. I
taking
didn't
my
do so
medicine,
good this
and
3 months.
I ain't eat no salad. I had some lettuce on the burger, and I'm gonna try harder next time, doctor. Or whatever the relationship is with your spouse, like go ahead and just tell everything. You know what I think about? What movie just popped in my head? Obsessed, with
Oh yeah.
Beyonce and the guy. When he
Yeah.
told me, he tells her some stuff, but he doesn't
Yeah.
tell her everything because he doesn't want her to freak out. He doesn't want her to think she's to think that he's cheating. So he find all these reasons not to be honest, and it ends up blowing up in his face. And so it's like we live our lives like that, like kind of tiptoeing around reality or tiptoeing around what's true to protect ourselves or to protect someone else. And at some point, you just got to rip that band-aid off and just be honest. And I just, like I said, I laugh because it just looks so ridiculous to me when you can tell that somebody's not being all the way honest. Whereas like, well, no, I wasn't even there. And you're like, it's a picture of you. There is a
You
picture
on video.
there. Yeah, and then it's like, oh no, that was from that day. You was there, you did it, own it. You will, and you tell your kids this, you will always get in more trouble for lying than you will for whatever the actual, at least that's what I tell my children. Um, you're gonna get in trouble, but you're gonna get in more trouble if you lie. So be honest. Did I have more? Oh, you're not peaceful and understanding. You don't know how to speak up for yourself. That one's a hard one. And I made that face because I know you and I know me, and we were raised in the same house. And these are some pills that we've had to swallow. I know I went through life because my husband is a talker. He want to talk about it. When it comes up, he's like, let's talk about it. So for years in my mind, he was the issue, right? Because when I have an issue, I just keep it to myself. I'm understanding, I'm peaceful. I just deal with it. Me and my independence, I just deal with it. I don't need you to make me feel better. I got it. We don't gotta talk about it. But for him, like he wanted to talk. And so I'm like, see, he's the problem because he always trying to force people to talk about stuff, like just go deal with it and get over it. And then I had to realize, like, I wasn't being a peacemaker. I wasn't being understanding. I didn't know how to speak up. I didn't know how to say, hey, I don't like this, and deal with whatever came with it. Because I know for both of us, a lot of it was, I don't want to do all that. I don't want to argue. I don't want to sit here and try to have to explain why I feel the way I feel or have you tell me that I'm wrong. And that's any relationship outside friend. I would do it with friends too. I just, in my mind, I'm a peaceful person. I don't want to argue. So the way that you not argue with people is just to keep your mouth shut. Child, you are going to start a war within your own mind if you don't start speaking up and allowing people to do things that are hurting you. Is hurting you, right? Like it you feel it and it's going to come out in some form or fashion. And so instead of labeling, crowning yourself with this halo of peacefulness, you got to swallow that hard pill and understand that maybe you're afraid to speak up for yourself. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not just
Oh
that you're
yeah.
a peacemaker, it really is that you don't know how to establish boundaries, you don't know how to enforce boundaries, and you don't know how to get your needs met. And that these are ways that I work with women, especially to try to help them, first of all, see it. Because a lot of people don't see that. They think that, oh, well, my husband, he want to go out and hang out with his friends, and I'm not trying to be one of them nagging wives, so I don't say nothing. And it's like, well, no, that's
It
not,
bothers
you
you.
don't have to nag, but it bothers you,
Hmm.
right? Because you here talking to me about it. And so what ways can you talk to him or we can work together to establish some boundaries so that you don't continue to be in a relationship where you're being hurt? And not only are you being hurt, you don't even feel like you have the space to speak up. That is a horrible existence. And there's no way for anybody to live. And so if we can do anything, it's encouraging you that like just keeping stuff to yourself and being the peaceful, understanding one, that's a mask for you not knowing how to speak up for yourself. And at some point, you're going to have to take that mask off so that you can stop being hurt.
Yeah, and so that's one, like you said, we're raised in the same household, and mine is kind of along the opposite, where it's a personality trait that to this day I still have to sometimes turn the mirror around and say, "Okay, Anika, get it together," because I am one. I don't like conflict. I don't to this day. Sitting here, I do not like conflict, and my natural response is to avoid the conflict. But avoiding the conflict oftentimes leaves me conflicted. So all I'm doing is I am internalizing and bottling the conflict, and it's still there. It's just now the person who's caused the conflict, they get to walk away scot
And they
free. They don't
living
even know they're
peacefully,
doing it.
rubbing their feet together,
Yeah,
not thinking
they
about
are the ones that are peaceful. They're the ones
right,
that are at peace. And
right,
I got a whole tornado inside of my head and my
right.
heart. So it's one that I have to, and one thing for me is that I always have felt like when you speak up, it is met with people get defensive. I mean, we know this. I'm not telling anybody anything that you don't know.
They
Either
don't
you
know.
talk to somebody that's defensive, or you yourself have gotten defensive. And so, oftentimes, when you tell somebody some of these ugly truths, then it's their natural response is to get defensive. And so, it's that confrontation is what I'm talking about. But that I've had to learn. I've had to learn to say, okay, well, roll your sleeves up. Yes, it may get, they may get defensive. Let me try to
We can work through
diffuse
that.
the
Right.
situation, but I have to tell you how I feel, because if I don't, like I say, I'm up at night thinking about it while you're sleeping over here like a
Sure.
baby.
Right. The other way that it has shown up for us as well, it was going through life assuming, right? You rolled up your sleeves and it ain't even no fight.
Yeah,
You're
I
assuming.
hadn't even
You
said
got
nothing
your
yet.
boxing gloves on and you're like, you know what? If I speak up, it's about to be a problem. And then there are times where you've spoken up to a family member or work or whatever, where you're like, hey, I don't like this. And how refreshing is it when that's met with, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize I was doing that. And you're like, oh, ain't gonna be no problems.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Let me
okay,
put
cool.
my earring
Right,
back
let me
on.
put
I
my
got the
earrings back on,
Vaseline
put my
on,
Vaseline
baby.
up. Right, because you're anticipating this fight that may not even be the case, or if it is, where you're gonna have to, maybe it's something difficult, and like you said, the person's gonna get defensive. You learn those tools to be able to work through that, to say, hey, look, this is going to be hard, but I have to tell you this because it's bothering me. And when they get defensive, you recognize it and you're able to say, like, hey, you're being really defensive right now. And I'm letting you know this hurts me. So, like, how can we work through this? What can we do about it? Because I don't want to keep feeling like this. And y'all really just work through it, right? Problems are not to be avoided, they are to be processed. And so you avoid it, and now you got this mountain of stuff that you haven't dealt with, and it's going to impact you, right? You navigating, trying to move around this mountain that's not going anywhere until you start to work through it and process it. So we had compiled a list, and then my mind got to going and I added some more. So I'm going to tell you the ones I added. I don't think I told you about these. One that I added was that you won't always get you from other people. And I say that because I feel like there are so many people who get so upset and get in their feels because they do things for people and they don't receive it back. And for example, I know somebody who like goes all out for people's birthday. She goes all out, goes above and beyond. And then when it's her birthday and then that's not received back, then you instantly feel like, well, they don't love me as much, or you mad, or you go out of your way to do something kind for somebody and then they don't do it back. That's hurtful, right? But I think one of the things that we have to accept is that we don't always get us from other people. One thing for me, I actually experienced this where I don't talk about bad about people. Like if you told me that you knew somebody, I would just be like, oh, okay, yeah. And I could know all kind of dirt on them. I wouldn't say a word. And so whenever I heard people talking about me, I would be like, well, why would someone do that? I didn't, I mind my own business. I'm not over here talking trash about people. So why are people being nasty? It really took a while for me to understand, well, girl, they not you. They talk trash about people.
Yeah.
So what made you think you were going to be exempt? And so that's one, like I said, that's a big one, just to understand, especially when you do something kind for somebody, it's really not so they can do it back for you. It's because that's who you are, right? You're a kind person, you do something kind. And you can't attach your kindness to you receiving it back. You can want it back, but you got to understand that you're not always going to get what you put in back. And you just have to decide whether you're okay with it. Do you want to stay in this relationship or not? Are there some boundaries that you can set to make, can you speak up for yourself and say, hey, I do this for you. Can you do it for me? But just get mad and down in the dumps because you didn't get you back. That's one of those things you got to understand. You're not always going to get you from your relationships with people. And then two more. Just because you were raised that way doesn't mean you have to stay that way. And I think that is a big one too, because you hear a lot of people that will attach their current circumstances to their childhood, right? Like, well, this happened in childhood, or in my house, this is how we did it. But if you are an adult, for us, we said it was independence, right? I was raised that way. That doesn't mean that it's okay for me to stay that way. Nobody, it is what it is. This is something that I was taught. I am acknowledging that no longer serves me at this place in my life. And I get to choose as an adult whether I want to continue this or not. For Chris, it was something simple. It was not celebrating his birthday. He just said when he was a kid, he never celebrated his birthday. And then I told him, as an adult, you get to choose. You get to decide, is that something that's important to you or not? And some people have different ways. Maybe it's you were raised around people who have substance abuse issues. And as an adult, you're like, well, this is just how it is, right? Like, this is how it was in my house. This is just life. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to live in your present adult life a certain way just because that's how you were raised. And you maybe not remember this, or maybe you do, but when I got married, you actually told me that. You were like, look, the hardest part about it is taking two people who were raised two completely different ways, and y'all trying to decide how you're going to raise your family, how you're going to do things in your home. And that really is, for a lot of people, the time where it shows up, when you interact with other people, friends, spouses, whatever, and they weren't raised like you. And so now you have to figure out, okay, well, the way you were raised doesn't work for me. And so what are we going to do? What can we tweak? And if you're not willing to let some of that go, then you're going to have a hard time having healthy relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're sitting with the mind frame that this way was right, that way was wrong, you're never gonna get anywhere.
Right.
Because as we have sat here and said, nobody has a playbook. I don't care what anybody out there says. You don't have a playbook on life. You watch those that went on before you. Smart people learn from other people's mistakes. Sometimes we repeat the same mistake, but it's one of those that it's not right or wrong when it comes to that situation. It's just how what about this can I take, what benefited me, but the things that were hurtful or whatever the case may be, my past does not have to dictate my present. I can leave my past in my past, and I write my book now. We tell our kids that all the time. This is your book that you're writing. And so when we have written down what we're doing, or you can't rewrite our book. This is now your book. You get to write your narrative. And so you don't let your past dictate your future, or you're not gonna ever get anywhere in any of your relationships
Are
that
you
you
gonna
have.
stay like it was, right? If your
Yep.
past circumstances were what they were and you weren't happy with them, but you stuck to all the rules that were back then, you're gonna be stuck with the results as well. And so it's not until you, like we've been saying, swallow some of these pills and you start to write your own narrative where you realize, like, you know what, I don't have to do that. Or maybe that worked then, that doesn't work now. The last one that I have is that you are always 100% responsible for how you react. A lot of times when someone's telling you something, they'll say, well, the other person started it, or I asked them nicely 3 times and they didn't do it, so I cussed them out. Or, you feel like somebody came at you first and then you blow up and you done talked about their mamas and you done said all this stuff. And you kind of want to make it be like, well, that's not my fault, right? To take it back to, well, it wasn't my fault because you are always 100% responsible for the way that you react to something, regardless of what the trigger was, regardless of what the initiation was. You have to own your reaction. And you may be okay with your reaction, right? If somebody hits you and you hit them back, that's a reaction that's like, hey, I get it, right? But if somebody did something that you didn't like, you felt like they disrespected you, and so then you cuss them out. We talk about this all the time, even in a professional context.
Oh yes.
Somebody just literally, they feel like you did something wrong, even when they're way off base and they're wrong, and then they're yelling at you and you're like, I'm just trying to help you. Or the thing that you're asking me for, I actually can't do because I'm gonna lose my license if I do that. Just the smallest examples where you really try to understand, like, why are you acting like this? But I'm sure they go home and they're like, that doctor did this, that lawyer did this, or that person did this to me. And it's like, but do you have to react like that? Are you happy being mad all the time? Are you happy having to go off on people all the time? If so, then I think you probably need to talk to somebody, because
I was just
who
about to
can live like
say,
that?
let me tell you, that pill you got to swallow with the other pill, because it's everywhere. I went out at the doctor's office. I went off
Yes,
at the grocery store. I
in
went
the
off at
drive-through
work.
line.
I went off at the job. Like, if you have to go off on everybody you talk to, I'm gonna really need you to turn that mirror around, because everybody can't be stepping on your nerves. I
That
mean, I guess they can be, but if
right.
that's my reaction to everything, then I have to honestly turn the mirror around and try to figure
Right.
out what is it.
Or the explanation of, like, they're like, yeah, I apologize and I own it, but they da 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 da. It's like, oh, look,
Yeah, that's not an
stop it,
apology.
period. Right. That's not an apology. I actually wrote down, we're going to do a video soon about how to apologize, because that is
Yeah,
a
because that's
tool
not
I think
one.
everybody can benefit from. And if your apology has a but in the middle, it is not an apology. I'll give you a spoiler alert for our video.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, I hope these were helpful. They are hard pills to swallow, but I guarantee you, hopefully after watching this, you'll go through situations in your life and it'll be a little bit easier to know, one, you're not alone. One thing that we do here at Clair Em Motivators is motivate by exposure, right? We tell you some things that we've been through, either personally or things that we've seen, how we've overcome certain things, and we motivate, encourage, and inspire you to do that in your own lives, to go and fix your relationships, starting with the relationship with yourself and ending with the relationships that you have with other people. And you'll see that mindset will just trickle into, like, oh, well, I can improve my finances and I can improve my relationships and I can be a better person. I can live a better life. So going into the new year, especially, I think this is one that is a lot of stuff we need to leave in 2020. Whew, just leave all of 2020 behind. And hopefully some of these pills that you hadn't swallowed, you go ahead and swallow them in the next couple of weeks before 2021 starts, and you get you a fresh start to a new year, get you some changes in perspective that will, we guarantee, improve your relationships. So I'd like to
Hey,
hear
one thing I was gonna say about the pill, because the pill is large. It is very big. It's a big
hard.
old horse
Whew,
pill. But
it's
I
like a
promise
prenatal
you,
vitamin.
if you can get it down, if you can get that first pill down, then although I can't fix all of this stuff with that one hard swallow, that pill will get easier and easier, smaller and smaller, and it'll be like a gummy, like you're just chewing a gummy.
Yeah.
So You don't have to
It's the
tackle it. I
difference
don't have
between
to
the
fix
horse
it.
pill prenatal
Yeah.
vitamin and the gummy
and the
prenatal
little and the
vitamin.
little
You
gummy
take the
one.
horse pills, right? And then eventually there'll be gummies, and because they're still gonna be a part of your life and you chew them.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
fine. I always ask people, like, but did you die? Like, you know, you
Yeah.
coach people for anticipating a conversation and then they do, and it's like that wasn't so bad. Like, yeah, it's painful, it's hard, but you're not gonna die. It feels
Yeah.
like it, right? When you have to let those defenses down, you have to let that guard down, and you really have to be, our favorite word here is vulnerable. It's hard to do because you literally feel like you're gonna lose control, but you're not gonna die. We promise. Y'all gonna be back to tell us about how, you know what, I did this and it worked. And so I'm interested in the comments if there's any that you all want to add or any that you want to comment on, experiences that you've had that you want to share with us, or just a motivation. Like I said, we do this because times are hard and there's a lot of negativity. And so we just want an open, safe, positive space for people to be able to discuss what's going on with them and know that it will be met with love and compassion and understanding. So if there is nothing else, I would also like to point out Anika's shirt. It says, you got to keep going to keep growing. Love it.
Yes.
So true. Put one foot in front of the other. Take the pill one bite at a time and you'll get it down. And
Drink some
your life,
water.
right, drink some water and your life will be better because of it. So we hope that you guys have a great week and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.